Okay, this video is going to show you how to advance the ignition timing 10 degrees on an Amazon flywheel. If you read the description, it will tell you exactly why you would want to do this, but I'll go ahead and show you really quickly. Most Amazon flywheels only time up to about 18 to 20 degrees before top dead center. Factory spec is 24 degrees before top dead center, so that is what we would call retarded timing or less timing than stock, which is going to not run optimally. So I'm going to show you really quickly the base timing of this flywheel. If I line it up on this firing line with this top leg of the coil, as represented on this flywheel here, this would be how it's installed. This top magnet edge is the firing line. If you line that edge up with your coil leg, I've got a degree wheel installed that will show you this flywheel is timed to 20 degrees before top dead center. So you start by lining your flywheel up on this mark first. Then you carry, and this is with a straight stock key installed. So do this with a straight stock key installed. Once you've set your flywheel up on its firing line, then you want to carefully remove the flywheel. Make sure that your crank does not move. And then get the key out of the way. And then you want to install the flywheel with no key. You want to have already lapped your flywheel to your crankshaft. Make sure the crankshaft does not move. And then you effectively want to set your flywheel up on this second magnet top edge lined up with the coil leg. And that's going to look like this if it were installed. Now line up this second magnet top edge with your coil leg like that. Now what you want to then do is mark your flywheel, mark the flywheel and the crank some way so that if this does happen to rotate on the crank, you can realign it back up. But the trick here is going to be able to properly torque this flywheel to the 65 foot-pounds without the flywheel having rotated or moved on the crank. If you do that, you will have a 10-degree advance for a total of 30 degrees for this flywheel. But if your flywheel starts off with 18 degrees, then you would get a 28-degree total before top dead center timing. Now, to prove that it works this way, I'm going to show you with a 10-degree key. So I'm going to roll this back. Actually, I'm going to take the flywheel back off. And I'm going to install the straight key again. And I'm going to put the flywheel back on. And I'm going to set it back up at its firing line. Okay. Let me get it back on the key properly. There we go. Okay, so we're going to set it back how we had it. This is just to prove that this gap is a 10-degree advance. We're going to reestablish our base timing again. That is 20 degrees before top dead center. So that's what its built-in timing is. Now this time, I'm going to simulate having rotated the flywheel on the crank clockwise by this perfect gap here. Watch this. As I take this flywheel off, this time I'm going to install a 10-degree advance key to show you that this gap is a perfect 10 degrees. So this is an advanced flywheel key. Okay. It's an offset flywheel key. And this is the tricky part for me, is getting this installed on the key without the key falling off. Because the magnet wants to grab the flywheel. Yeah, okay, hang on. Key fell off. Normally I would do this with the engine on the very top, but I don't want the crank to move. I want to prove that this gap is a perfect 10 degrees. There. Okay. Look at that. That is the 10-degree advanced timing key, and look where the flywheel's lined up. So that is where, now, after you would have torqued your flywheel, after you would set it on the second magnet, If you then line up on the firing line, you're going to have a perfect 30 degrees before top dead center. So there's your 10-degree advance. So to recap, set your flywheel up on the firing line first, roll it back to the top of this middle magnet, and that is where you would want to lock your flywheel down. So one more time, you start off on the firing line here, lined up in time with a straight stock key. You would pull the flywheel off, you would remove the key, and then you would reinstall the flywheel lined up with the top edge of this middle magnet lined up with the leg, just like that. And then you would want to torque, put your flywheel starter cup on, put the nut on, mark your crank and flywheel so that you know that the flywheel hasn't rotated on the crank, and then properly torque that crank down. You always want to use a new flywheel nut, and I prefer 65 foot-pounds torque. A cast aluminum flywheel rated at 56 foot-pounds torque, but the crank and the nut are the same whether you're using a billet flywheel, which is recommended for 65 foot-pounds. So I torque these all to 65 foot-pounds. But there you have it. That is how you can advance your timing 10 degrees with the Amazon flywheel without needing an offset flywheel key. Now, final thing I'll say, it is definitely easier if you just go ahead and buy one of these offset keys. This is going to make your life easier. It is, and it can be challenging to get this flywheel locked down and torqued in place without it rotating on the crank and throwing off your timing. So again, if you can start off with an offset flywheel key, that's going to be the best way to do it. But this way does work. If you can get it torqued down with your flywheel in this position, you will have your 10-degree advance. Thanks for watching.